Thank you. Look, it's great to join today, Andrew. Really appreciate the chance to talk with Ambassador McKee and Dave, who I've worked with in different incarnations for some time. Look, I think as other speakers have mentioned, infrastructure is obviously critical for growth and to improve living standards in PNG. It's especially important given the topography of the country, as others have mentioned. The two major cities don't connect by road. We've got many remote communities in both the islands as well as the highlands. I think what we've seen is PNG's capacity to finance its infrastructure needs over the past few years has unfortunately been badly affected by the COVID shock. PNG hasn't been hit as hard as some of the tourism-based economies in the region, like Fiji, but still the economy contracted by about 3% last year. We're hoping it will rebound this year, and that in turn put pressure on government financing. And I think, as came out of part of Dave's presentation, what we've seen is the PNG government undertake very significant borrowing over the last few years, but that borrowing has mainly been for budget support or other policy-based financing, and Australia's been part of that. But it hasn't been for new infrastructure investments. So I think what we're very much hoping is that PNG's capacity to start borrowing for new infrastructure investments will start to increase again over the next couple of years. And I think we see this as being a very important part of PNG being able to support an economic recovery and bounce back, especially, and this is a point Ambassador McKee made, especially if the infrastructure investments PNG is borrowing for focus on maximising local participation, local employment, rather than just importing labour and importing most inputs from overseas. So Australia's committed to supporting PNG in its critical nation building investments. We've been scaling up the proportion of the $500 million annual bilateral aid program towards the target PNG has set us of 50% of that being used for infrastructure. And the new $2 billion Australian infrastructure financing facility for the Pacific, AIF, I expect over half of the funding we have in AIF can potentially be made available for PNG. Let me give you a couple of quick examples of areas we're engaged in. The first is electrification. As Prime Minister Morrison committed Australia to provide a minimum of $300 million Australian to support PNG's very ambitious targets to improve access to power. And that'll be a combination of both grants and loans from the bilateral program and from AIF. We're also very pleased to work alongside the US, New Zealand, Japan, ADB, and other partners with that. The first focus of our engagement on the electrification has been supporting off-grid renewable energy solutions for remote communities. Australia's bilateral aid program has funded the Powering Community off-grid program. First four projects under that are underway and are expected to distribute about 6,500 solar home systems in West Sepik and along the Kokoda track. To improve access to the grid, Australia is supporting a New Zealand-led program to extend the Ramu grid into the Tsasak Valley in Enga. Construction on that's commenced, and that's expected to connect up to 5,500 household, schools, health centres and small businesses to the grid. And through AFP, working with ADB, we're ready to proceed with a new $85 million power sector development project. The Australian financing as part of that is expected to connect 30 to 40,000 households to the grid in East New Britain and Morobe provinces. We're very much hoping that the PNG government will be able to sign that after the 2022 budget comes out in November. We're ready to go when PNG is ready to go, and we're hoping for construction tenders on that to go out early next year. To strengthen the Moresby grid, AFP is ready to finance the Endeavour transmission line. And again, we're ready to sign that agreement when PNG is, and hopefully looking to see tenders go out very early next year for the construction. And to increase generation capacity in Morobe and on the Ramu grid in the Highlands, we're refurbishing the Ramu 1 hydro station. That'll bring roughly 16 megs of additional generation capacity online by the end of the year. And we're also undertaking a feasibility study and ready to finance a larger refurb of Ramu 1 to bring it back to its full 60 meg capacity. And in addition to that, we've been ready for some time to finance the first utility scale solar project in PNG. We've been a little disappointed that the Australian company that held the lease to the site decided not to proceed, and we're now looking at alternative sites for that. Australian investment in the energy sector is very much focused on increasing household access, and we're very much focused also on sensible, high priority, least cost generation. You know, I think in that context, one of the things we would encourage our friends in PNG is to be a little cautious about proposals for very significant new generation. We're conscious of hydro plants of up to 180 megs proposed. You know, I think it's important to make sure that generation is actually scaled to PNG needs. And I think important that PNG doesn't wind up signing power purchase agreements for power that's not actually ultimately needed. On the maritime sector, quickly, I really appreciated the presentation from the CEO of PNG Ports Corporation earlier this morning. We're working closely with PCL to ramp up our support in the maritime sector. In June, our High Commissioner signed an MOU with Prime Minister Marape, envisaging a planned $400 million in AFP financing to upgrade ports in PNG. We're hoping very much to have that ready for signing by about the end of the year. The first cab off the rank will be Oro, where I expect tenders will be out very early next year. And then also working on Kawi and Kimbe, Lae, Manus, Wewak, Vanamo, with tenders progressively out over the course of next year and early 2023. On the road side, again, really appreciate the presentation from Secretary Wary earlier. Australia's been supporting PNG road maintenance since 2007. We funded over maintenance along over 1,700 kilometres, almost a third of PNG's national road network, a little over a third of PNG's national road network. That's provided jobs for over 40,000 people. And again, we're looking to scale up through AFP. We're hoping to sign agreements with PNG in the next couple of months for loan financing for maintenance along the WOW and CPIC highways. And then, as Secretary Waring mentioned, we'll be working with PNG to undertake preparatory work for the first stage of the transnational highway, hopefully over time connecting Lae to Moresby, consistent with Prime Minister Marape's Connect PNG agenda. And we're hoping to be able to offer PNG up to $300 million of financing for the first phase of that, again in close cooperation with our friends at ADP. Telecoms remains a key focus for Australia. We were very pleased to finance the Coral Sea cable. Significant improvements out of that in internet speeds, but we're very keen to continue working with the PNG government for policy and regulatory reforms to make sure that also flows through into better prices, better service quality. And I'd note we continue to actively explore options for major new investment opportunities, particularly potentially with private sector investors that could improve telecom services in PNG. As I think Ambassador McKee mentioned, PNG's infrastructure needs are immense, can't be met by government alone, does need involvement by the private sector. We're very keen to make sure there's strong private sector involvement in all our projects. In terms of tender arrangements, we will be giving priority to maximising local involvement, including cutting contracts up into smaller packages to allow bids by private sector firms, local PNG private sector firms, where that's appropriate and where there's capacity in the market. And I think where international involvement is required, we will be working with the PNG government to make sure that we hire quality firms and that we also maximise the involvement through subcontracting and labour of PNG citizens. Ultimately, it's government in PNG that's responsible for setting a policy framework that encourages private investment. Certainly, we've been encouraging our friends in PNG to make sure that they're aware of the importance of consistency for private sector, and we also have a capacity to provide financing directly to private sector firms looking to invest in PNG. So we welcome any indication of interest from firms that are looking for finance. We'd be more than happy to have a chat. Finally, while I'm hoping you'll see us step up very significantly over the next few months, I would just make a little bit of a plea for patience. We do need to have the PNG government ready to borrow and doing quality, making sure we work through procurement processes that are focused on maximising local involvement and are focused on quality. Do take some time. We're almost there. I think we're just about to sort of turn the cusp and really look forward to working with our friends in PNG and the business community. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. That was fascinating. Just a quick question for you. You mentioned the solar project during your talk. Where was the location of that solar project? The one that you were very an alternative developer.
Hoping that we might be able to work with an Australian firm or a PNG Australian firm prominent in the Markham Valley I'm hoping we will look at options, and I think the Lae Airport is certainly one option which we're hoping might be an alternative site.
Excellent. And as far as engagement with you, again, is it should they engage directly if business wants to get involved, or if they want to propose a project? You'd like to hear from them directly?
Please. I can't promise to always say yes, but if we're not aware of projects, then the answer is definitely going to be no. So you can reach us, www.aiffp.gov.au, or you can reach me at robert.jauncey@dfat.gov.au.